questions here is, there's nothing people love more than taxes aside from unfunded mandates. So there's a lot of unfunded mandates that have sort of come out here with the new, national, national infrastructure for cybersecurity with the executive orders. How are we managing that? What are we to do here as simple software providers?
Oh my gosh. Unfunded mandates could literally be its own episode in itself, because
it probably will be, let's be clear.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. Because there's so many different aspects you can look at it from. You can look at it from the poor people who are responsible and held accountable in the federal government agencies for implementing, all of the latest and greatest mandates. And mind you, all of these things are definitely brought to the front so that we can protect ourselves and improve the nation's cybersecurity. But typically you get a mandate that comes in and it's not part of your 3-year budget cycle, but you've got to implement it this year. So then you've got to checks and balances of what your priorities are and shift things around. Something's got to move to the right. Something falls off of the plate. And sometimes you just don't have enough money to get it done. Mm-hmm. But what does that then mean for those poor people that are stuck holding the bag and must implement, right? You do have to be flexible. The one thing I love and carry throughout my life that I learned in the military is learning to operate in Gumby mode, right? You got to be flexible and understanding. You got to have realistic expectations, and you have to develop plans and strategies to implement these things. On the vendor side, I feel like a lot of times they get a little bit of an easier break because they have a little bit more of a grace period to implement those minimum requirements when you're going through the FedRAMP process. While the rest of the federal government has to kind of rush and implement right away because that's what's really driving these federal mandates. And then our poor cloud service providers have to go and develop solutions to meet those. So it is a little bit of a dog and pony, right? What comes first? How do you rush to be able to get through the process and support these minimum mandates, and pushing back on legislation to make sure that you have appropriate timelines to really implement and being realistic? Sometimes it takes a phased approach, but collectively, that is why the governance and policy structure is so important, in things like the executive order that define the minimum requirements for development of policy, to really detail what needs to be implemented based off of the structure of the high level items that are defined within the executive order for people to go and then implement it. It doesn't happen overnight. It is a struggle. And I always feel bad for people that have to kind of chase their tails to get through this process, because on top of the unfunded mandates, you've got timelines, you've got fiscal year minimum requirements, and you have to be very strategic. So having those open and honest conversations between your federal government agencies and your cloud service providers to come up with standardized solutions that are going to meet these requirements, I think are super important, to have that kind of open communication, to be able to really kind of come up with the strategies to solve these problems. There is no answer, though. It is a pain point for everyone that has to go through the process, unfortunately.
Okay, and that's typically what you expect from the government. It's a pain point, deal with it, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you're talking about pain points. You're talking about pain points that are actually kind of huge. I mean, just one of those unfunded mandates is requiring people to add potentially millions of dollars to their SIEM, their security incident event monitoring bills, by mandating that they hold every single data point possible for years, and have them active inside of their SIEM. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's a lot more monitoring, a lot more logging. It's not just adding to your Splunk bill or your whatever SIEM bill. It's also adding personnel. It's adding sensors. It's adding instrumentation. It's a significant amount of implementation. So my point is that just for that one unfunded mandate, I think there's like 5 of them in there. It could be millions and millions and millions of dollars of uptick in budget and personnel and such. So it's not small.